The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Whitting.
Most people watching the evening news might easily despair over hopes for the next generation. The bodies of today's children are already polluted with industrial chemicals, poisons in the products they use, the air they breathe, and the foods they eat. Moreover, their minds are polluted with viewing the world through screens, with the violence and cruelty displayed by TV shows, video games, movies, and the Internet. Kids targeted by ad agencies are experiencing chronic depression, fast food obesity, and addictions to street drugs and prescriptions handed out by doctors who think the only answer is to write another prescription. 2 out of every 5 children are diagnosed with a learning disorder. Moreover, today's technology results in shorter attention spans, less exercise, superficial relationships, sleep disorders, shallowness, disrupted hormones. The list goes on and on. In her newest book, Children of the Fifth World, A Guide to the Coming Changes in Human Consciousness, today's guest asks the question, can chaos and disaster produce the foresight and ingenuity necessary to remake our families, our communities, our culture, our world? Her surprising answer is yes. PMH Atwater is a world-famous investigator of near-death experiences and has been researching and writing about the ramifications of near-death experience since her own 3 NDEs in the 1970s. Her research has been more extensive, her theories more expansive, and her teaching more dedicated than any other experiencer I know. Her most recent books include Near-Death Experience, The Rest of the Story, and Children of the Fifth World, which concerns the important implications NDEs parallel to the evolution of life on Earth. For example, her book shows how the many children today labeled as autistic or otherwise damaged have enormous potential for greatness. PMH, welcome to NDE Radio.
Well, hi. It's so wonderful to be on here and talking about this exciting subject. You know,
it is.
These kids are surprising us. Did you know that 1/3 of those children worldwide, all of those different countries that administer the standard IQ test, 1/3 of them are testing out between 150 to 160. Super
Wow.
genius. Yes.
Yes.
And the
yet,
other third are really smart. I don't care if they're flunking in school and can't spell. Don't be fooled by these children, even if they're learning disabledly. Take, for instance, if these kids, the so-called learning disabled or autism, if they take the Raven's test instead of the Wishler test. The Wishler test is a standard test. But the Raven's test tests fluid intelligence, what you can learn. 1/3 of those autistic, so-called learning disabled kids who take this also test out 150 to 160. They're geniuses. They
Wow.
may communicate differently. They have a different vocabulary, obviously, but they're smart. Yeah, I mean, don't look at a disabled child or an artistic or brain damaged child as if they can't understand you. They can. You just speak different languages.
will this intelligence, though, be enough to overcome all those forces of destruction that I mentioned, that you list in your book? That so many forces biologically and intellectually are working against this next generation of children. How are they going to survive all that?
Well, these are the most challenged children that we've ever produced. The smartest, the most incredible innovators, creative, but the most challenged. So how are they going to do it? Certainly better parents. Parents who set some limits, who work with these kids, and especially get them out in nature. Their number one fear is silence. So get them out in nature. You know, more nature walks, more relationships with animals, more volunteering. This simple measure will just heal forces and screw-ups and confusion quicker than anybody else and anything else, and also get them involved in making food, helping with the gardening. If you're going to do cookies, put the cookie dough in their hands. They have to make the shapes and forms and put them on the cookie sheet. You know, get their hands involved. Their hands have to be busy. Their feet have to be busy. This is one of the ways that you really work with the brain, is to, especially if you've got them busy in mud or dirt or clay, like, you know, walking around barefooted or doing gardening or different issues like this, that gets into the nervous system quicker than drugs will. It's natural.
Yeah. So even though they may be more intelligent than we are, they still need our guidance. I remember in your book you have the phrase "remember the elephant." Maybe you could tell us about that.
Well, certainly remember the elephants. What they found with elephants is if you've got a number of young bulls together in a pen or in an enclosure, they start to have troubles and problems, and they invent all kinds of angry outbursts, and they do all kinds of silly, ridiculous things, like typical teenage boys do often when they get together and have no supervision of any kind. But you put in one older male, only takes one. You put in one older male into that pen, and all the other young bulls settle down. What is that saying about parenting? You put in one father or one older male who has some sense, and he can then begin lovingly and easily, kindly, start directing these young kids. That's really all it takes. You know, it's just amazing to me that the solution can be that simple.
Yeah. In your book, Children of the Fifth World, you discuss the increasing number of genius kids emerging and liken them to those children who have gained gifts from going through a near-death experience.
Well, that's how I got started to begin with. You know?
Well, tell us about that.
Well, you know, I'm a near-death researcher.
Of course.
I'm one of the pioneers in the field. My research base is now nearly 4,000 child and adult experiencers. So I'm one of these in-depth questioners, observation analysis, that kind of thing. So while I'm doing all of this, I begin to notice that the children born the natural way, everyday kids, normal kids, were beginning to manifest the same after effects as near-death kids. And, you know, that's not possible, Lee. Not possible. So I start, you know, I'm one of these people that goes around saying, why? Show me. I got to see this. So I did. I started another research project on normal kids, all everyday kids. Not just what we can see and feel and are exposed to, but also esoteric stories and wisdoms, what's expected or what might be coming or predicted about, you know, this idea of a new race. Well, forget that. What it is, as near as I can tell, is an ascension of the race we have, or a maturing of the human race we have, or a bump up in the evolutionary cycle. And you can clearly see that. You can clearly see that in the brain, the nervous system, the digestive system, that the human race is undergoing a makeover. Yeah, we're being bumped up. And I think what will really, really help parents is if they can get hold of this book. You labels like indigo, crystal, starseed, cosmic, all these labels, toss them. Every one of them, toss them out the door. Then take the characteristics those labels supposedly describe. Take those characteristics and bunch them together, and you have the new kids. You have the profile of the new kids. You have a profile that's right there. It's clear. It's in your face. None of this nonsense stuff. Let's see it for what it is. And, you know, we can go further into the esoteric literature and wisdoms. It's there. And it shows things like root races. When we're talking about a root race, R-O-O-T, root, that means the core DNA of the humankind at that cycle in time. You know, everything goes through cycles. We do as people, the human race obviously has since its beginning in the earth plane. Planet Earth goes through cycles. Our universe goes through cycles. Everything is cyclic. And if you look at the progress of the human race throughout the ages, then you certainly see these huge, giant cycles. In our wisdom tribes, with our wisdom people, esoteric people, mystical people, they call it the coming and going of root races. And we can certainly look at what's happening now, and it does fit the predictions of that upbeat, that upstep of the fifth root race moving into what they call ascension, or the fullness of the fifth root race. Not saying that this is just the beginning of the root race, the fifth root race, but that upstep, that progression of the fifth root race into its fullness. And by golly, that's, you know, if you read those old words and those old literature and you look at what's happening with these kids, wow. You know, I want to tell you something that is an absolute mind blower. I like to, clip out news stories too, especially when I travel the world, and especially in Turkey and, other places. But here's one of these news clips, complete with a photograph. And this is dated September last year, 13. And it is about a 19-year-old girl. She's a university student who invented a cheaper, virtually fuel-less propulsion method to replace chemical explosion and radioactivity technology for conventional rocketry. So here's a 19-year-old girl who invents a cheaper, virtually fuelless propulsion method for rocketry. And guess what, Lee? This girl is a Muslim, and she's in Egypt. I mean, stick that in your head. It's like, wow, it's a girl and she's Muslim. I just want to scream it to the whole world. Well,
there were times in history when the Arab race was really way ahead of the Western science and mathematics, for sure. Yeah.
Way ahead.
Well, in your book, you describe DNA as a biological internet. And, but we've seen how quickly the electronic internet has evolved, and I'm wondering, can our biological internet keep pace with this two-edged sword of technology that's in many ways damaging the kids today?
Well, that's the rub. We don't know. There's no guarantee that this enhancement, this acceleration, this ascension will come to pass, be successful, absolutely last. We don't know. We hope it will, but we don't know. You know, one of the big things that I'm noticing is that the second homogeneous that the world has known since the age of the dinosaurs has begun. Once a homogeneous has begun, it can't be stopped. A homogeneous is where all the different species and types all then begin to, what shall I say, come together. It's a coming together of genetics. The first homogeneous was, thanks to Christopher Columbus, occurred 500 years ago when Christopher Columbus set foot in the Western Hemisphere. Well, it wasn't just him and the guys. It was all the mice. It was all the germs. It was all the bugs. It was all the illness. They're the ones who brought to our hemisphere malaria. We didn't have it before. They brought slavery. Didn't have it before. They brought all kinds of things. Interesting, when you read the history, within 100 years of Christopher Columbus stepping in the Western Hemisphere, let's see, I did go. That fact just slipped out. Let's put it this way: huge amounts of people in the world died. Just fantastic amounts of people in the world died, all because of changing of the genetics, changing of the farming, changing of the way we do things, changing in the way business is conducted. It was on. The incredible book is 1493 by Charles C. Mann. It's just it's just incredible. Well, the second one has begun, and it began with, I believe, Monsanto and all the rest of those guys changing the genetics of the world's food and plant life.
I have in your chapter, The Great Shifting here, the impact of Columbus influenced a variety of activities, including the silver trade in China, huge loss of trees, the rise of rice, maize, wheat, sugar cane, and potatoes, the agribusiness complex.
1 out of 5 people died. 1 out of 5 people across
1 out of 5.
The world.
That's right. Within 100 years, one in 5 people across the world died because of the Columbian homogeneous. From diseases, multiple types of slaveries, brutal working conditions, industrialization, hunger, environmental destruction. This is an amazing book. Let me say, if anyone is out there is interested in change, all kinds of change, they've got to get this book because it reflects change. But look at from the beginning of time till and into the future.
But look at it this way: all that horror birthed the modern world, which was very positive. If we look at what could be the modern horror, this might birth. This might birth that one world, or that sense of a higher kind of world. We could finally come together and go from a modern world to a unified world. A unified world. That could be the positive end of all of this. If we look at the positive part, if people will just wake up and look at the challenges and what's actually happening, not what they think is happening, then this could in fact be the inspiration, that impetus, that inspiration to help us do things differently, and that's what the new kids are doing. Did you know that changes in education are positive? Did you know that in the state of Utah, most of the schools in Utah now teach or are open to full immersion dual language training? Wow. You know, that it just automatically opens up the executive functions in the brain, and it enhances spatial reasoning and spatial learning. We're opening up now to adaptive learning. You know, I mean, you can look at the horror. It's there. Let's look at it. Okay, 81% of the suicides today between 10 years of age and 24 years of age are all boys. Boys are being hit harder than girls are. So if you want to look at the horror, it's there. But this is also inspiring us to do things differently. And yeah.
I am always moved by your optimism. And I've got to ask you, is that something that you gain from your own NDEs, or you talk about future memory in your book, and I was wondering, is your positive optimism a product of things that you've already seen?
Well, partly. I was always an incessant questioner. And I tended to have a positive outlook when I reached womanhood and became a wife and mother, Sunday school teacher, secretary, all those kinds of roots. But it took dying. It did. I got to admit that. It took dying. And I died 3 times, 3 times in 3 months, mind you. I call it the heavenly sledgehammer effect. And ever since then, my middle name is Joy. I mean, I'm just joy. I wake up in the morning joyful. I go to bed at night joyful, even when I'm pissed, if you'll pardon the phrase, even when I'm kind of angry, and I do get angry once in a while, and even when I make mistakes and make a fool of myself, and I do that once in a while. There's just so much joy in me. And I'm so excited about our world, about what's happening in our world, and what we can do to make a difference. Because we can. We absolutely can. And if we have mentors out there that teach this to the kids and inspire the kids and uplift the kids, that's all it's going to take, are mentors. To teach them how to use intuition in a positive way. Teach them how to use psychic abilities in a positive way. Teach them how to be creative and inventive and innovative in positive ways. They've got the bug. It's in their genes. Let's lift that. Let's help them to lift that, because it's already there. It's already inborn. That's part of this fifth root race. I mean, these are the ones of higher thinking. These are the ones of higher intuition. These are the ones who are the communicators, the innovators, who are turning this world upside down. And they are. If we can just help them. One of the things that I'm doing all that I can to inspire them to do is get involved in local politics.
Yes.
We need their vision and their energy and their shortcuts in our government, and we need them desperately.
Yes.
And some of the kids are. They're doing it. And they're finding different ways of banking. They're finding different ways of raising food. They're finding different ways of building houses. They're the ones who are bringing us smart houses. You know, they are the ones who are the real humanitarians. Yeah,
they're the ones thinking about the environment too. The ones that really are concerned for the future of the Earth.
Yeah, to give them a chance. It's just,
you know,
yeah.
One of the things you mentioned in the book in passing was the 11,000 BC Göbekli Tepe city they found in Turkey.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm thinking, and this beautiful city with this amazing city that they've only begun to uncover. If we were doing work like that far back, we must have slipped a great deal before we, now we're going up again. But I mean, what happened in the meantime that we would have lost the skills?
Things. You know, if you read the old real archaeology instead of, you know, that passes the so-called scientific protocol, read the real stuff.
The forbidden archaeology.
You know, yeah, it's enough to shake your cookies. It really is. Well, remember, everything is cyclic, and history is cyclic. So we're now discovering that even 12,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, human beings were advanced and had advanced cultures. And we're now finding that. We're finding proof of that. You know, this is no longer a channeler or a psychic that's telling us that, although I honor and greatly respect those sources. We're finding the proof of that. And everybody is beginning to wiggle. It's like, oh, ooh. Well, you know, near-death research challenges science itself.
Yes.
What we're finding now in archaeological findings is challenging science itself.
And science fights back tooth and nail. You wouldn't think that of science, but it does. It likes to cling to old ideas.
Well, sure, anything that's comfortable and anything that, you know, will add to your profile. You know, you're going to tend to support. I certainly have run into this in near-death research. Well, we won't get into that. But listen, I don't know. Do we have time for me to make another point here?
Sure.
Time? A couple of minutes? Okay. In my research of the new kids, you know, 1/3 have both genes to build a better brain. These are the ones that are scoring genius. 1/3 of artistic kids who take the Raven's IQ test is genius. About 2/3 of the kids with autism are male, 1/3 are female. About 2/3 of the kids with dyslexia are female, about 1/3 are male. About 1/3 have no sense of living a full life. About 2/3 have no intention of ever marrying, going to college, or becoming parents. 1/3 are profoundly gifted. 1/3 are quite intelligent, intuitive, creative. 1/3 are coming in amoral or too violent to handle. So look at that. Thirds. I don't care what statistical you turn to. You're getting the same thing. 2/3, thirds, 2/3, thirds. Look, friend. Thirds are the baseline of universal order. They're
PMH.
the golden mean.
Oh, that's true. Yes, and you make the point in your book that DNA follows that same spiral.
Yeah, there's another hand at work here. Wake up, people. It's called divine order.
PMH, we are out of time. Before we go, tell the listeners how they can learn more about your research, your books, and how to get a copy of Children of the Fifth Generation.
Certainly, get on my website, www.pmhatwater.com. Just last week, I get my free monthly newsletter. Sign up for it on my website. Just last week, I carried a huge newsletter on electrical sensitivity and I went in depth, especially near-death experiencers in earthquakes and tornadoes and lightning storms and dealing with electronic equipment. You want to get that. There is an archive. So
okay.
Be sure you get my newsletters.
Yes, they absolutely should. They're fascinating. And unfortunately, we're out of time for today. I want to thank our special guest, PMH Atwater, for sharing her research and insights with us. If you'd like to listen to the show again, the first show that PMH did with us back in September of 2013, or any of our other programs, please visit our website at nderadio.org. And for more information about IANDS, please check that website at IANDS. And I hope that you'll be able to attend our upcoming Labor Day weekend conference on NDE's health and healing in Newport Beach, California. That's August 28th through the 31st. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening.